Thanks, gentlemen. Welcome this morning, particularly those, Mr. Aguilar, Mr. Coleman. Thank you for your service to our country in many different roles. Dr. Barrett, Dr. Garrett, welcome. We're delighted that you're here. I'm channeling my father this morning. My dad used to say to my sister and me when we do some boneheaded stunt, he used to say, just use some common sense. Just use some common sense. We didn't have much of it. He said it a lot. I'm also channeling a woman who once came to one of my town hall meetings years ago when I was a congressman, and it was on budget. How do we reduce budget deficit, which was $1.4 trillion about 8 years ago. Today it's over $400 billion. 1.4 trillion is down to about 400 billion. It's still way too much. So we're talking about spending money for a wall that we really don't have. But I remember at this town hall meeting, a woman who said to me, she said, talking about whether or not revenues could be a part of a deficit reduction plan. And she said, I don't mind paying more taxes. I just don't want you to waste my money. I just don't want you to waste my money. And I'm very mindful of that as we think about the combination of tools that we use to make our borders more secure. Another one of my guiding principles in life is find out what works and do more of that. Find out what works and do more of that. And I think one of the common themes that comes from this discussion here this morning is there's no one answer. There may be several answers. There may be several answers to the same area of the border. Another point that's not been mentioned, one of the reasons why I think we saw, Mr. Colburn, that precipitous drop in illegal immigration in the Yuma sector is the folks from Mexico are no longer coming to the U.S. in such great numbers. In fact, you know, there's more people going back into Mexico from the U.S. than there are Mexicans coming into the U.S., which is a big help. And that says to me, well, what are some ways that we could convince people where most of the illegal immigration is coming from today? What can we do to convince people in Guatemala, Honduras, and Salvador not to come up here? And one of the things we could do, as the chairman knows, Claire knows, that the reason why they come to this country is because their lives are miserable. Their lives are unsafe. The conditions of misery, we're complicit in their misery because of all the drugs that we buy that are trafficked through their countries. Well, why don't we do something to help in that regard? There is help on the way. It's called Alliance for Prosperity. And it's literally take Plan Colombia, something that's worked over the last 20 years, and replicate it with respect to those 3 countries. The funding for that plan is, I don't know, about $500 to $700 million a year. We're talking, if we would just take half the money that we're talking about spending for a wall, we could fund the Alliance for Prosperity for the next 2 decades, which is how long we've been funding Plan Colombia, which has worked. Last thing I want to say is illegal immigration reform. I'm not interested in basically saying to people that are here illegally, well, you can just stay. We'll just provide immunity for you guys and let you stay. I'm not interested in doing that. Most Americans are not interested in doing that. We passed comprehensive immigration reform here in the Senate, 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago that did not do that, but actually did give people who were here, played by the rules, got in line, worked, paid taxes, spoke English, we gave them a pathway to a legal status. I think that probably makes some sense. I think a guest worker program makes some sense. And Senator Johnson and I talked about this more than a few times. The idea, and a lot of the people are down there that want to come here and go to work, want to be able to go back home, maybe for good. And we don't give them a very good opportunity to do that because when they get over here, they get stuck and they can't go by. React to some of what, last thing I want to say is force multipliers. We've mentioned some of the force multipliers that make sense. And I've been down on the border from San Diego, where I used to be stationed in the Navy, all the way almost to Brownsville, where we used to fly out of Brownsville and Kingsport, but Kingsville. But I've talked to hundreds of Border Patrol officers and said, what do you think we ought to be doing? And I'm just going to mention some of the answers they've given me, and some of them we've heard here today. Yeah. Not just helicopters, but helicopters are great. Not just drones. Drones can be great. Not just fixed-wing aircraft. They can be great. But let's make sure they have the right kind of surveillance equipment inside the aircraft. The Vader system, which is actually one of a number of packages that works very well. But I used to go out in Navy P-3 airplanes out over the ocean with my crew, a 13-man crew, looking for people that are lost, ships that were sunk or whatever, with binoculars. Good luck. Good luck. And when we have a great system like Vader, and we have the aircraft, the drones, and the fixed-wing aircraft, for God's sake, let's make sure the surveillance aircraft is equipped with that technology. Okay, what have I heard that works? Drones properly with proper surveillance packages. Horses in areas with high grass, and helicopters I mentioned earlier. Motion detectors sometimes make a lot of sense. Mobile and stationary observation towers with the right kind of observation surveillance equipment on board. Better intelligence. We've not talked about better intelligence, but that's certainly a good point. Mobile and stationary observation towers, cooperative agreements with landowners along the border. Someone's mentioned lighting. Those are all things that work someplace along the border. And I've just given you a stream of consciousness here. Mr. Aguilar, just react very briefly to some of what you've heard. Does any of it make sense?
Everything that you have just lined out there, plus more, Senator, is exactly what any Border Patrol agent that has served on our southern border, or northern border for that matter, will identify as needs and requirements. It is how you put that package together that is critically important. It is those capabilities placed against the requirements that the agents in the field have. So yes, absolutely all of those things, plus other things that are constantly being developed. Situational awareness, for example, situational awareness capabilities that exist that should be applied so that terrain change, as an example. From an intelligence perspective, agents need to know that in a remote or very rural area of operation, the terrain change has occurred to notify them that you need to be paying attention to this and taking those kinds of efforts.
Good, thanks. Mr. Coleman, one of the things I didn't mention, walls work. I've been in Israel, they work. But they can also be tunneled under and climbed over. Fences work. And as we've gone along, we've figured out how to make better fences. So I'm not just saying those are bad ideas. In some places, they work great. But 1,900 miles of walls? Really? Mr. Coleman, I'm almost out of time. Please, briefly.
One other item that
I just wanted you to react to my stream of consciousness ideas, force multipliers.
You've listed some very good ones, and your sources being the Border Patrol agents, as I said in my opening remarks, ask the agents, and they will tell you. Consequences. A system of consequences is extremely important. If there are no consequences for illegal acts, then it encourages return. Deterrence. The end game, of course, in the end, is to make the criminal organizations that now own the movement of people along the border and drugs and weapons and cash, and create an environment where they believe they can no longer get away with it.
Okay.
You do that through all of those kinds of resourcing in the right amount of it, right place.
Thanks, Mr. Very briefly, Dr. Garrett, please. Just react to what the diatribe I just went through.
Yes, I would say I've got a colleague, Dr. Correa Cabrera, who's over at the Woodrow Wilson Center. Last year, she was on a $200,000 U.S. State Department grant studying human trafficking route on the eastern route from El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras through Mexico. She is a great expert. She actually interviewed traffickers in prisons in those countries and provided a report to the U.S. State Department. That kind of intelligence, getting to your point, is very, very valuable, I would think, in terms of understanding the connections between transnational criminal organizations, which have begun diversification, which is another one of our specialty areas, in drug trafficking, human trafficking, and in petrochemicals, hydrocarbons. So, it seems to me we're doing our country a disservice if we don't utilize resources like that, like the Wilson Center, like U.S. State Department grants. Those are the kinds of things that we need to have to improve our intel on. All
right, I'm out of time. Thanks, Dr. Garrett. I just say in conclusion, Mr. Chairman, colleagues, we got a lot of tools in our toolbox. We need to be using them. A wall and a fence, is that part of the toolbox? Yes, it is. But to spend $15 to $25 billion at a time when we have a budget deficit of over $400 billion is unwise, it's unneeded, and it's unaffordable. Thank you so much.